Hi, and welcome to the premiere episode of Tech Talk. I'm Ken Mingus, Executive Editor at Computer World. I'm here with Brandon Butler from Network World, Mike Simon from Mac World, PC World, all kinds of consumer pubs.
Every world.
Every world, right. And Famina Rashid, who is in a remote location. We're here to talk about what's going on in technology today, the hot IT topics. We've got some news. We've got some fun things about the iPhone. We want to talk about how you interact with computers and why you're doing it wrong. But first, I wanted to start with Brandon because, you know, the newsiest thing we've got right now is Microsoft's recent announcement about Azure Stack.
Yes.
Okay, what is Azure Stack?
What is Azure Stack?
I'm going to play dumb because I really don't always understand these things.
So, in a nutshell, Azure Stack is Microsoft's private cloud offering.
Right.
And the reason this is a big deal is because Microsoft is one of the first companies to offer a private cloud that links up very closely with the public cloud.
Okay.
And so for a long time, since the advent of the cloud computing era, the holy grail of the cloud has been hybrid cloud computing. I want to, I don't want to move all of my workloads into the public cloud. I still want to have some of my workloads in my own data center behind my own firewall. But that's not really easy to do, to create this hybrid cloud platform. And so all the way back in 2015, Microsoft talked about this Azure Stack.
Okay.
So Azure is the name of Microsoft's public cloud, and Azure Stack is meant to be a private cloud that is built on an infrastructure stack that you run in your data center on your own premises. And again, it's running the same software as what Microsoft is running in the public cloud.
So this is like having a version of Azure that is locally grown, basically.
Exactly.
On your premises. You don't have to. So the big issue here is, or the big plus here that Microsoft is trying to sell, is that you don't have to upload your data to the cloud and risk the security concerns that go with that.
Correct.
Right?
And so, but they're more pitching it as you don't have to upload all of your data to the public cloud. They still want you to use Azure Public Cloud,
Yeah.
but they say that for some information that's highly secure, highly sensitive, maybe for information or use cases where you don't have a connection to the public cloud because you're in the middle of the ocean, because you're on an oil rig or a cruise ship or something, you can't connect to the public cloud, then this Azure Stack can be a local private cloud that connects with that public cloud. Now, there's one other reason why this is really important, is because when people think about the public cloud market on the infrastructure side, they think of three big players. Microsoft is one of them.
Yep.
Amazon Web Services is sort of known for inventing this market. And then Google has come up in recent years as being a major player in this market as well. And Google and Amazon don't have something like this.
I was just going to ask. So they're really first out of the gate. Microsoft is here.
They are, yeah. And like I said, they've been talking about this for almost 2+ years, and now it's finally coming to market. And Microsoft is really taking more of a hybrid cloud computing approach to this. Google and Amazon have much more of a public cloud-centric focus to their clouds. They talk much more about how companies are outsourcing their entire data centers, shutting down data centers, and moving all of their workloads to the public cloud. And Microsoft, for a long time, has talked about how it's a hybrid cloud world. But when they talk about hybrid, they talk about a Microsoft on both sides hybrid cloud equation.
So both public and
Public and private.
and private,
Yeah.
and then the hybrid.
Yeah.
In terms of pricing, because I mean, obviously that's a big deal for companies if they're trying to figure out what they want to do. Has Microsoft announced any pricing on this?
They
yet?
have, and they have their pricing on their website, which you can check out. I think the more interesting thing about pricing is not how much it actually costs, but how they are going to be pricing this. And they're going to be pricing it similarly to how folks use the public cloud, and that's a pay-as-you-go model. So when you buy Azure Stack, what you're doing is you're buying an infrastructure stack from one of three partners initially, Dell EMC, HPE, or Lenovo. So you get this infrastructure stack that has compute,
That's the
network, and
hardware,
storage.
basically.
The hardware, exactly. Yep. And then the software that runs on top of it, you only pay for what you use. So if you are using Azure Stack for virtual machines or storage, then you are not buying a whole subscription that you pay for annually and it's a set price. You're paying for it however much you use it, however many VMs you're running in Azure Stack, however much storage you're keeping in Azure Stack, that's how you pay for it. And they have a whole menu of other applications and services that run on top of Azure Stack, and those you only pay for when you use them. So you have this access to this whole library of applications that can run on Azure Stack, and you only pay for them when you actually spin them up. So that's a sort of unique pricing model as well.
Are businesses, are you buying the hardware, or you renting the hardware?
You are buying the hardware
Okay.
from, like I said, the three initial partners, Dell EMC, HPE, and Lenovo. Soon Cisco and Huawei are also going to have offerings in this.
So you can't use your existing server setup and just kind of plug in as your
Not
stuff
really.
to-
Yeah,
okay.
this is probably going to require new hardware for folks to buy from one of these hardware vendors. And they're going to offer ongoing support for it as well. So one complicating thing with Azure Stack here is that you are going to have to sort of manage two relationships:
Right.
one with your hardware vendor, the Dell EMC, HPE, or Lenovo, and one with Microsoft, who's going to be selling you the software.
Yeah, because I mean, the benefit, what I see the benefit of cloud offerings is that you're guaranteed to have the best hardware. It's going to work. It's going to work fast. You don't have to deal with an old, outdated server. It's constantly updated, and that's what you're paying for. You're paying for Microsoft to say, all right, we're promising you that we're going to deliver this stuff as fast as humanly possible.
Exactly. Yeah, you're paying for them to do all the legwork, all the
Right,
hard work
right.
of managing the infrastructure.
So what happens in 3 years? Like, say you buy Azure Stack. What happens in 3 years when your chip in your server is old?
That's a downside of Azure
Okay.
Stack, and I think that's why Amazon and Google are saying, don't worry about the private
Right.
cloud. Just send everything to the public cloud,
Right.
because we are going to upgrade all that infrastructure for you.
It'll be safe. There'll be
Yeah,
nothing to worry about.
Brandon.
Why not?
Brandon,
Yeah.
with the Azure Stack with the private cloud offering, you mentioned that Microsoft is going to be running the Azure software, the same one as public. Is that being maintained by Microsoft, or is
Yes.
that the enterprise that now has to figure out how to maintain the Azure software?
Yeah, so Microsoft says that they will maintain the software, and there's two important components to that. So they have regular software updates that are going to be shipped to Azure Stack, and customers have a choice of when they actually implement those. So if you're a shop that likes to update frequently, then you can do this as much as you want, and you will stay as up to date as Microsoft is going to be able to with the Azure public cloud. And then what they're also going to be doing is shipping a once a month security and hardware updates. So these are going to be done through your hardware vendor, and they say they're going to incorporate all the latest security patches and bug fixes, stuff like that.
That
So-
makes me wonder, though, if you're trying to coordinate. The first thing I thought of when you said that was Android, because you have to worry about those patches being rolled out from the hardware vendors. I mean, so let's hope that the hardware vendors are rolling them out on a regular basis, just as
Yeah.
Microsoft would expect you to roll them out.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to. Did you have other questions for me? I didn't mean to.
I mean, that was kind of my thought also. Like, it's hard enough staying on top of patching and updating, and then now it looks like we're making it slightly more complicated by relying on hardware vendors, on Azure, as well as my schedule. So it just seems like we've actually complicated the process a little bit.
Yeah.
It may be complicated, and that's why this solution may not be one for everyone.
Right.
I talked to a couple analysts this week who follow the cloud market closely, and they say that this, while it's much heralded and has been talked about for 2 years, they say this is probably not going to be something that everyone is going to use. But for those use cases where people have stuff that they absolutely do not want to ship into the public cloud, but for some reason they want it to run on the same software stack as what's running in the public cloud, then this is an answer for that. So
It does feel like there's a certain niche here.
Yeah.
Obviously Microsoft is making a play for a narrow niche of companies for which this might be useful. It occurs to me too, though, if you're doing pay as you go, you're going to have some way to monitor how much you're spending. Because if you're not keeping tabs
It's a
on
huge
that,
challenge.
that can blow up in
it
a
can,
very short time.
runaway virtual machines that don't get turned off, and storage that you have up there that you don't actually need. There's a whole market of cloud management tools that do that stuff for customers, and that's a fast-growing market.
I'm sure for obvious reasons.
So, sorry, go ahead.
So the main idea of the stack is that it would be seamless to switch from private to public and go back and just easily
Yes.
turn things off, turn things on, and
Yep.
as you need them. Okay.
Yep.
So I can see the appeal to a certain but a very specific business model here.
Yeah, but you think about it, and how many people do you run into who say, "Well, I like the public cloud in theory, but I'm not ready to use it because of XYZ." Because I have
Security, usually.
security
Yeah, right.
regulations. I have these customized apps that I've been using that have been developed specifically for me, and I think Microsoft is trying to appeal to that clientele who like the idea of cloud but don't want to ship all their data up into the public cloud.
Right. Is Azure Stack available now?
So
What's the time frame?
So you can order it now, and it will be shipping in the fall. So it's
Coming soon.
Coming soon.
Yep, okay.
But yeah, the big news last week was that you can finally start ordering it. And this, again, is 2 years after they first announced it.
Okay.
So, and I'm going to be very interested to see how Microsoft's biggest competitors here, Amazon and Google, how they respond to this. Amazon just last year made a big announcement with VMware, partnering with them. So does that relationship deepen because of this? Google partnered with a company named Nutanix. Does that partnership get deeper? Like, sort of, what are the ripple effects of this Azure Stack will be really interesting to watch.
I mean, the one
cloud
thing
market.
is both Amazon and Google are not primarily hardware based.
Exactly.
So I would assume they'll just double down on their software, on their their
Yeah,
virtual versions.
and they're going to have to find hardware partners
Right.
to sort of to address this private
and
cloud
convince
side
them
of
they
the
know what
market.
they're doing with that hardware too.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
Microsoft has a history here. They know.
Yeah.
Well,
But
you'll be tracking this, though, to see
I
how
will
this
be,
rolls
yes,
out
yes.
and which companies might be taking it up.
I sure will. Yeah. And yeah, it'll just be really interesting to see. It's an interesting. It's like I said, it's been sort of hyped up a lot in the cloud market, and now people are actually going to be able to get their hands on it this fall. So it'll be interesting to watch.
Okay, cool. You know, we had talked about the security angle here, and Famita, we were talking earlier that one of the things you wanted to get into was what's going on security-wise right now. So take it away. What's going on?
Well, I mean, I like the fact that Brandon was talking very diplomatically about how there are many reasons people don't want to go to the cloud. But I think it's fair to say that for most enterprises, the primary reason, or if not one of the top three, is security. They're so worried about all this data that they're collecting, that they're using, and then putting it up on cloud, which is by definition open. And when you look at the news, you have Verizon customer data being leaked, Dow Jones, you have the voting records. It just seems like it is unfortunately the case that you put data on the cloud, it's going to get breached. And I want to actually kind of point out that this is a misperception that once you put it up there, it's the cloud provider's job to do all the securing. You know, if you have your own data behind the firewall during your perimeter, the IT department, the security team works together, figures out how to protect the data, and that responsibility doesn't go away when you move to the cloud providers. And that's been something that I think got lost somewhere in the shuffle, where it's like, oh yeah, I gave it to Amazon. It's there. Amazon is taking care of it. They're hack-proof. I'm safe. And that's really not the case.
No, that doesn't sound like a good way to look at things. It's too dangerous.
Exactly.
I think you're right. I think so many people have been enamored with the idea of public cloud, and I can just use Amazon's cloud and I'll be safe and secure. But if you talk to Amazon, they talk about this shared security model, and we do our own thing to protect our data centers and provide base level infrastructure security. But there's still stuff that you have to do, Mr. Customer, to secure your cloud. And there's a right way to do it, and there's a wrong way to do it.
Exactly. And I mean, that's exactly it. The shared responsibility model is basically Amazon take care of the infrastructure, the actual servers, but the virtual machines that you're spinning up, the applications you're installing, the data storage itself, whether or not you use encryption or not, that is entirely up to the enterprise. And until IT administrators, or even, I mean, the other thing about the cloud is you don't have to wait for IT. Developers, other business admins, they can spin it up as well. And if they aren't actually realizing that, hey, I shouldn't check off global access on my server because that means anyone in the world can access the server. And unfortunately, that's exactly what's happening. I mean, with Dow Jones and Verizon, they actually had checked off, make it globally accessible. It sounds easy. Oh, I can access it from any IP address. But it means anyone who has the time to sit down and type out random IP addresses or try to guess the URL also finds the password, also finds the server instance. So one thing that we really need to start talking more about is just the fact that Amazon, and I'm picking on Amazon a little bit, but the same thing with Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, they provide the tools. They provide services for enterprises to do the security management. And that needs to be something each company, each enterprise is taking into account. That I do need to make sure that if I have data being stored, if it's customer data, if it's PII, I need to have encryption on there. I can't just say putting on S3 is sufficient. I need to make sure it's encrypted.
Do you think?
There was
do you,
actually,
do you think?
yeah.
I'm just going to say, do you think companies? I mean, it sounds like this to me seems like common sense. So how is it that these companies are checking off, global access without realizing that they're potentially opening the door here to who knows who getting to that customer data? How do they not know that?
I think it's a combination of thinking, oh, who's going to come after me? Who no one is interested in my data.
Right. Okay.
And also just not really realizing what each of those options really mean.
Okay.
And it also could be a factor of people are maybe moving a little too fast into this stuff. And like you said, there are developers who are going out and using VMs and spinning them up and maybe not doing that in an IT sanctioned way and not being done in, the most appropriate way. And I think you're right that there's a lot of sort of education that needs to be done and sharing of best practices of what is the right way to use the cloud. And sort of this sort of reinforce this idea that you do have to, do stuff to use the cloud appropriately.
I mean, one of the things that was really interesting earlier in the year when all the NoSQL databases in the cloud started getting infected with ransomware, the biggest wake-up call for that was actually scientists who use the cloud for their data science and data analytics. They're not used to the fact that you have to think about security of their infrastructure. In traditional times, it was the university IT that took care of it,
Right.
but the cloud was great. They're suddenly getting all these resources. So you have all these scientists who have gone ahead and said, oh yeah, I have to do this analysis. I'm just going to put it up on Amazon. And then earlier this year, you had ransomware going through and suddenly locking up their entire career's work. And it was definitely when people got nattering on this side about security and encryption, I should be paying attention, or I should be talking to the security folks. And this is actually the opportunity for security folks to really start interjecting. If they know that their enterprise is going to be looking at Azure Stack, they should be interjecting, saying, hey, let's make sure that we're talking about this. Let's make sure we're getting in. So it's actually a two-way street where the IT, the developers, everyone who's like, oh, I'm going to use the cloud, let me check in with my team to make sure I'm doing it right. But also for the security side to really start making a proactive effort to say, I know you're looking into this new thing. Let me work with you on it. Oh, you're thinking about the private cloud or hybrid. Let me make sure that we are actually on the right page. So it's more of a conversation that needs to be happening as well as education.
It's surprising how that conversation is the same conversation that IT's been trying to have with all of its users for the last 20 years, and even though we've moved to the cloud, that conversation never seems to really take place.
And we're not just talking about businesses that don't think they're going to be attacked. I mean, Verizon, Yahoo, TJX, Target. I mean, this happens on a monthly basis, and we find out about it 6, 7, 8 months down the line when our even if we change our password, it doesn't matter. Somebody has our data already. And it's from a consumer standpoint, it seems crazy that these end-to-end encryption. I encrypt my own account, and I'm one person. If I was handling millions of accounts with passwords and names and social security, I don't understand how somebody at that company didn't say, yeah, we need to encrypt this with the highest level of encryption that we possibly have.
As opposed to global access.
As opposed to
so that everyone can have access to it.
Now, not to totally defend the cloud and be a cloud homer.
Go ahead, Mr. Cloud. You are Mr. Cloud. Go for it.
This can happen if companies aren't using the cloud too.
Correct.
Right?
True.
I mean, internal data centers can get hacked.
This is not really a cloud issue per se.
Right.
It's a security issue.
Right.
It's that security conversation. Whether you're public cloud, hybrid cloud, no cloud at all, you've still got people who are not making smart decisions when it comes to security. And it does baffle me as to why that conversation just either it doesn't sink in, or you've just got people who don't think about it or don't want to think about it, or what. But it just never seems to happen in a way that we can shut down these breaches.
I mean, I think there are two things here. One is kind of referring back, like, I don't think people realize until maybe even the past year just how valuable some of the stuff that we keep online, some of the stuff we keep on our devices really are. I hear a lot of people even now saying, oh, what are people going to do with my email address? And I'm saying, you have no idea what people can do with your email address. Like, don't be so cavalier about that. And I think it's just still people say, I'm a nobody. I'm just a small company. I'm just one person. I don't matter enough. I think because we emphasize so much the nation state side of the attack, we forget that just normal corporate day-to-day data, personal data, is valuable, extremely lucrative to be resold. So that's one. And I think the second one really also is we kind of, in technology, we don't have a lot of patience for mistakes, but mistakes happen. It's not that people don't care, but it's, as Brendan mentioned, if you're in a rush because you have to spin up so many servers and you're like, okay, let me get this up, I'll go back and change the password. And then something else happened and you got distracted and you forgot to change the password. It's not that you don't care. You meant to do it, but all of us have so many things going on, competing for our time and attention, that it just happened. I mean, that's what happened with the Verizon one. Everyone's sitting here beating up on this poor guy, saying, how can you be so dumb? But it really probably had more to do with he had a gazillion other things going on, and he just didn't get around to it.
There is truth to that. I mean, we have to factor in the human equation, and people are going to make mistakes, and it's just like it seems to be the same mistake.
And then that happens with us too. I mean, we write about this stuff, and I don't change my password every month like I'm supposed to, and all my accounts don't have two-factor authentication on it. I mean, you get busy, you forget, and it happens.
Yeah. Okay, so bottom line, we all should be changing our passwords right now. Right?
And maybe there's a role here for advanced technology like machine learning to help us help protect us better. I mean, Amazon talks about these platforms that they have that will automatically scan users sort of what policies they have in place on their accounts, and they will tell you, hey, this traffic is not encrypted that you're using in the cloud, and that's an automated platform. And so, I mean, I think there are things that can be done to sort of help people out, to point out bad behavior.
Well, and you do have to assume, too, that when these breaches take place, the mythical person that we're beating up on, I'm sure he or she learned a lesson and will not make that mistake again if he or she is still employed somewhere. And so I do think that, gradually we do, I'm hopeful that we're making progress along these lines. But it just, every month it just seems like there's another breach.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Ken, this is where exactly robots and automation are going to help, right?
I'm not sure Skynet's going to take care of us, I'm a little worried about that too. But no, I get it. No, I totally understand the machine learning part and the AI part that can suss out the things we may have missed. I do understand that that's true.
I mean, one of the things that we talk about on the enterprise security side is a lot of these spinning up and configuration. If all that is automated, then it's always being done consistently, and that automation script is less likely to be distracted by a crisis. So I think that is one of the things that's going to change the conversation. As you mentioned, we've been trying to have this conversation for 20 years now. And I think that now that automation technology has gotten to the point where it's easier to use, it's a little bit more reliable, we're going to see that conversation happening, and with the better result.
Great. All right, I want to shift gears a little bit and turn to Mike as we're talking about security here. Mike, one of the things you've been looking at is the rumors about the upcoming iPhone 8.
Daily rumors about the iPhone 8.
Yeah, exactly. As we get close to September, there'll be even more. And what's happening with perhaps Touch ID. So, I mean, and you've got some thoughts or concerns about what Apple may be up to.
Well, there's the big phone coming out, allegedly, is the iPhone 8, which is out of character for Apple because there's the iPhone 7 came out last year, so you would assume it would be the iPhone 7S, which also will exist according to the rumors. So there's going to be three models: the iPhone 7S, iPhone 7S Plus, and the iPhone 8, according to the latest
And the iPhone
rumors.
8 is the new flagship.
The iPhone 8 is the fancy anniversary iPhone X, iPhone Pro, however they brand it. iPhone 8, I think, would be a little weird because then you'd have two numbers. I don't know. iPhone Pro makes sense to me with the iPad and the MacBook also having that surname. So the iPhone Pro, the iPhone 8 would be their absolute flagship device. We're talking about probably $1,100 to $1,200.
Ouch! Damn.
128, 256 gigabytes.
It's going to hurt when I buy one.
Yeah. Edge-to-edge screen, like a true edge-to-edge screen with the
OLED, right?
OLED,
yeah.
all the things that we've been waiting for in an iPhone that Apple kind of, I won't say they drag their feet on, but they don't rush to things. Apple rarely is first.
Right.
You can point to instances in Apple's history where they have USB, where they've been at the front.
Yeah.
That's not always true. They perfect a technology and then they wait to implement it sometimes, a lot of the times. One technology they were at the forefront was Touch ID. The iPhone 5S brought that, and at the time it was an amazing accomplishment for a phone.
Yeah.
We had nothing like it. We were using these horrible 4-digit passcodes, or most people were using nothing at all to secure their phone. So
I love my Touch ID.
yeah, it's
I love
fantastic.
it.
It's
Especially
fast.
the
it's
current
easy.
generation
Yes.
is really nice. It's fast.
Yeah,
It's smart.
it's within like
Boom.
microseconds.
In fact,
yeah.
it opens up the phone too fast sometimes.
Yeah, seriously, I agree, because you just want to look at your lock screen
And
and,
boom,
and
I'm
it's
already
open.
in,
Yep,
yeah.
totally. So they've perfected the technology to the point where it's something that I don't have numbers, but I'm assuming 95% of iPhone 7 or 6 users use.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. It's good for securing your phone. It's good for deep state however you want to call it, whatever word you
So
want
the
to
deep
use.
state cannot get to what's on my
It's
phone
your
without
phone,
my thumb.
If someone doesn't cut off your finger and use your
Let's not
phone
give
or
any
put a
ideas.
gun to your head and force you to do it,
Yeah.
your phone is secure.
Right.
There's no way inside it. And that's better than a passcode for obvious reasons, because you can guess a passcode. You can use brute force
Right.
methods to get inside.
Well, it's also a
those.
foundation for mobile payments. I mean,
Absolutely.
and a secure
and
foundation.
secure for apps. I mean, password managers
Yeah.
have blown up in the last 3 years because you have access to all your stuff. Secure notes, secure. Your phone is so much more secure than it ever was.
So we've decided Touch ID is a good thing.
It's a great thing, and
So
that's why all the other phones they all have it now.
What's the concern with the new iPhone 8 or
The
whatever it's
the
called?
concern is that they're getting rid of the home button, which
Right.
is where Touch ID
Right.
lives. With that, they're also getting rid of Touch ID because apparently the rumors say they were trying to implement some under the display technology where you would just put your finger on the display and it would magically know what you're doing, where you're touching. And I guess that's not ready for prime time, which makes sense because I haven't seen it.
No. Nowhere.
You've seen papers about it and theoretical concepts, but it doesn't really exist.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. So if they get rid of the home button,
Right.
does that automatically mean that they have to get rid of
Well, no,
Touch ID?
because Android phones put it on the back.
You're right.
Maybe it's an inelegant solution, but it works. It's
Yeah.
your finger naturally rests there. It's not complicated. It's not even clunky. It's fine. But Apple being Apple, they're not going to put a circle in the back of their iPhone. They
Right.
want their Apple symbol and a nice smooth
They want that
piece of clay.
clean,
Yes.
exactly that clean look.
So I'm sure there's a prototype in Johnny Ive's office, but they probably we're not doing that.
Yeah.
Right.
So they're just getting rid of it, and
And replacing it with
face
facial scans
recognition.
and like iris scans or something
well,
like that.
iris scans I haven't heard about. Iris scan I'd be all right with that.
Okay.
Because that's personal as well.
Yeah.
The facial recognition, for one, on the phones I've used it on, which among them the Galaxy S8, it doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
Iris scan is fantastic on the S8. I look at my phone, and it opens.
Yeah.
But they have all of them on there. They have the face, they have the fingerprint, and they have the iris. So you have options on the S8. According to the rumors, they're going to all you're going to be able to do to unlock your phone, to secure your phone, is the facial recognition, which, unless Apple has a 100% or 99.9% foolproof way to do this.
It would have to be as foolproof as Touch ID is
now.
now. Yeah.
Well,
to
I mean,
work.
when Touch ID came out 3.5 years ago, we were okay with, okay, it works 9 out of 10 times or 8 out of 10 times, and, it's still cool emerging technology, and it's on one phone. Now they're selling this flagship phone, and this facial recognition has to be, A, foolproof, where you can't spoof it with some kind of a 3D
mask
renderer or a
or
mask or
something,
something. Yeah. And B, it has to work as quickly as Touch ID. As you say, Touch ID works too well sometimes.
Yeah.
You can be holding your phone anywhere. With the face, you have to hold your phone in a certain spot, or at least the uses I've, with Samsung. It might be different on Apple. Maybe they say that there's going to be lasers and 3D scanning, and maybe you don't have to be right in front. But your phone still has to be in front of you in some way.
Right.
So
And
if it's on the table, it's not going to work. If it's in your pocket, it's not going to work.
Is low light or bright light another problem?
That's another
with-
problem. Low light,
with facial
absolutely. I mean,
recognition?
infrared would take care of that. But, I mean, who knows? I'm
This
sure
just
they've
sound-
thought of all these things.
This just sounds like a kludgy solution
I agree.
to what is basically a design issue, because they want the
Yes.
screen to be, from top to bottom, side to side, all screen. And yet, it seems to me it would be unlike Apple to do away with a technology that is both popular, necessary, and functioning well, just for the sake of design?
Well,
or am I wrong?
I don't know.
I mean, I know.
I don't know if it would
Johnny
be
Ive
unlike
design,
them.
I get it. Yeah, but I mean, do you really think that they would?
I mean, with
that
the
Apple would do
with the iMac, they took away the disk
Flop,
drive
yeah.
for design purposes. They took away ADB for design purposes.
Didn't they also
It takes
see that
courage to do it,
But didn't
right?
they also see that as technology, though, that had been
They did.
supplanted by better
Yes,
technology,
sure.
and they were moving to the better technology?
And they did, and it helped push the industry. And in those instances, absolutely, it was.
Right.
And maybe in this instance, it will be too. Maybe they've developed a system that is better or as good as Touch ID, as safe, as secure, and as convenient. I mean, we're kind of just dealing with rumors, and it's it's a little unfair to say that it's not going to work. But I have misgivings about it.
Yeah.
Just because Touch ID is so good, and it works so well, and it's so safe, and it's so secure.
All right.
For example,
Yeah.
on the Galaxy S8, the fingerprint sensor is in a horrible location.
Where
It's up next to the camera, so you have to move your finger. I miss it probably 50% of the times when I have to use it.
Yeah.
But it's there. So when I need it, I have it. When I have to open an app, or when I have to use Samsung Pay or Android Pay, it's there. I don't have to worry about the iris scanner when I don't when I'm not holding the phone here or when I'm in a store. It's just it's a matter of convenience.
I wonder.
And-
I wonder if Apple would do that with the Touch ID on the back as the fail-safe.
That's exactly it.
Because basically you'd have the screen that could read your face
Yeah.
or your iris or whatever, and if for some reason that didn't work, then you've got the Touch ID
that's
as
the
the
thing.
fail-safe.
So there
If
would be
you-
what a home button on the back of the phone, or
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, just-
fingerprints and a home button on the
Right.
back of. I can show you the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Michael, one
Yes.
question I'm wondering about. I know even with Touch ID becoming easy to use and, as you say, fairly unobtrusive, I keep hearing that it's not widely used, that people aren't actually using Touch ID as much to secure their devices. Do you think maybe the idea of facial recognition is even more seamless, so more people might use it than they would turning on the fingerprint?
Oh, good question.
I can't. I mean, if they're not using Touch ID, I can't imagine that they would do the facial. I mean, maybe when you buy a new phone and you update your iCloud. I mean, the first thing it says is set up your fingerprint sensor, and everyone I know uses it.
Well, I guess the point is
But,
that you
I
wouldn't
mean,
actually have to put your finger on the home button, like
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
it would be
Look at the
hold your
phone
phone
and
up and let me
hold
take a
it-
picture of your
yeah,
face.
yeah.
That could be. This just sounds like a paranoid person's nightmare.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if you're talking about quote unquote deep state, I mean, I know that stuff on the iPhone is encrypted and
Yeah.
protected
They
there and
have to
everything.
secure enclave.
But good
and all
luck,
that, yeah.
good luck convincing a lot of people that allowing Apple or your phone to take a picture of your face for facial recognition purposes, that they're likely to embrace that
Yeah.
right now.
I mean,
we
if-
live in a
if-
paranoid time.
Totally, and if they're not doing the fingerprint, which is
they're not
I
going
can't
to do
imagine
the
they're gonna
face
do that.
either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I don't know the numbers, but I do know that Apple, one of their events, they said that pre Touch ID versus post Touch ID, most people are using a passcode now, whereas they weren't before.
A passcode and Touch ID.
Well, yeah, you need them both. They
Yeah,
work. They
both.
work together. And most people were just bypassing that completely and just swiping
Swipe
their
to
phone,
open,
which
yeah.
is extraordinarily dangerous. If you drop your phone, people have access to everything.
It's interesting about the Touch ID. To your point, Famita, my mom has an iPad Pro, which she loves, and she has the thumbprint thing done. It's all set up. She's got a passcode, and she uses it. And she just turned 80. She's a very young 80 with her technology stuff, and doesn't even think twice about it. And so I wonder if maybe more people are out there using this than we think. No way to know.
I hope so.
Yeah, I do too. It's a smart technology. Whatever comes next will be better.
Yeah.
I guess we'll find out in a couple
And
of months.
it's also brought this conversation to a consumer level.
yeah.
So Touch ID,
And
people
security.
see it now.
And
Yeah,
security.
all
People
of
do
that.
get it.
Yeah.
Do understand the security
Yeah.
thing.
and the expectation is in the fall we'll get some sort of
in
announcement.
in October.
October.
September,
So
October.
yeah, okay.
presumably the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus,
7S.
7S and 7S Plus would have Touch ID, and the iPhone 8 wouldn't.
And there are rumors that the iPhone 8 may be delayed in terms of actual delivery, but who knows?
Every year
We'll
we read
know.
that
I
rumor
know.
every single
well, that's,
year.
You got to gin up interest anyway. Okay, and then finally, the topic that I just wanted to throw out there for you folks is Mike Elgin, who writes for Computer World, had a column a couple of weeks ago that I thought was fascinating, where he talked about how we interact with computers and how we still use keyboards. QWERTY, Q-W-E-R-T-Y, QWERTY-style keyboards, which were designed in the 1860s to deal with problems of manual typewriters and how the keys worked, okay? And so Elgin's point is that we are still using this technology at a time when you've got AR and VR and HoloLens and Google Glass and all kinds, I mean, multi-touch on an iPad or the phone, lots of ways of interacting, and yet we still tend to gravitate toward QWERTY-style keyboards. And so his feeling is that over the next couple of years, as technology advances and we are able to actually access information with other devices or with multi-touch, that people would eventually realize that that's not productive, that you can do more with gestures and touch than you can
and
typing
voice.
things in.
And voice,
And
yeah.
voice. In fact, yeah, good point. Because one of the things that's happening now with the rollout of Siri and Alexa and all of these, Cortana, is that people are getting used to using their voice to navigate or get information. And that the whole idea of sitting down in front of a computer and typing something in is going to change. So I thought it was interesting. I'm not sure. I think Mike is sort of a futurist, and he sees this coming faster than I think it's coming. I think it's not going to be a couple of years from now that companies will suddenly say, "Here's your HoloLens, and we're taking away your keyboard." I think that's a recipe for disruption that might eventually be good and productive, but in the short term isn't going to happen. So, but I just wanted to throw this out there. And so my question with that setup is, do you think that makes sense? Do you think he's on the right track, or do you think that that's just sort of pie in the sky, technology will save us someday?
Well, I mean, I think we have changed pretty remarkably over the last 10 years. Multi-touch, 2007, that's 10 years ago. It didn't exist on a consumer level, only in real high-end, fantastical prototypes.
And actually, Mike makes the point that it was Apple's decision to take away the keyboard and force users to use multi-touch and the keyboard that would come up on the screen.
Right.
That actually forced that. That you
Absolutely.
have to force this to happen, or people will never get away from it.
I mean, if you look at all the smartphones before that, they were Trios and Blackberries, and they all had hardware keyboards. And people were typing like this, which is crazy. But that's what they liked, and that's what they used. And Apple got a lot of flack for not having a hardware keyboard. Yeah.
Ballmer was talking.
Steve
Ballmer said that basically that's never going to work because it doesn't have a keyboard. Forget it.
Right.
And all right. So anyway, your point was that we have already modified.
I think we have a lot. I think the UI or the interface that we use to input information has changed dramatically. And as you say, we do use voice more, but there's a comfort level with the keyboard.
I like my keyboard,
Yeah,
even my own
I
screen
agree.
keyboard.
I
talking
think
to a
the
journalist,
comfort
though.
level is entirely generational, though. I mean, I work a lot with elementary schools in my area, and I'll tell you, during their computer classes, the kids sit there, touch their screen, and they're like, "Why isn't this a touch screen?"
Yeah.
They sit there and they complain, "Why can't I just talk to my computer? I talk to my Alexa at home.
Yep.
Why can't I talk to my computer?" So I think it's a generational thing. All of us are from the era that we remember the IBM click-clacky keyboards.
Yep.
The current generation, even the ones in college, they don't remember that. But then keyboards has always been slow. It slows them down. So I think we are going to see it, but it's more of a generational shift. Until the ones in the power and the control of design right now are willing to say, yes, I'm willing to give up a keyboard, I think the keyboards are going to stay.
I think that's a really good point. If the applications that I'm using don't require me to use a keyboard, then I'm not going to use a keyboard.
Right.
If it's all touch enabled, then sure, I'll do that.
Yeah.
But most of the applications I use now.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time
Keyboard
I
helps.
used the tab key to navigate a screen, which I did 10 years ago all the time.
Right.
So yeah, totally. And speaking to the generation thing, I have a 5-year-old son, and he can't write yet, but he uses my iPad like a pro.
Yeah, I've seen lots of friends who have kids,
And
young kids, 2, 3 years old, and they can navigate through that.
At 6 months, he knew how to unlock my phone just by naturally.
I think that's a
doing
different security question that we're going to have to talk to you about. Okay, good point, though. I mean, you're absolutely right. I hadn't thought about the generational thing. I actually remember the IBM Selectric. We won't go there. An ancient electric typewriter. But it does sound like this is coming or something is coming.
And I say, sure, give me more choices, give me more options,
sure.
but
don't mandate it.
Don't mandate
But the
it,
problem is, if you don't mandate it, people will never get away from what
Right.
they're comfortable with.
What's funny is my favorite feature of the newest version of Google Assistant is that I can type to it.
Yeah. Well, they're doing type to Siri in I think iOS 11. Is
And
one of the things.
so we went backwards. We started with voice only, and now they're adding the keyboard because there's sometimes when it's just not.
Maybe it's
I don't
some-
want to talk to my phone in public. I really
Well, I don't. Exactly. I
Yeah.
don't use Siri unless I'm in the car by
That's it.
myself
Yeah,
or
me
at
too.
home with Alexa
Totally.
and I want
Yep.
to hear some music or something. But wandering around in public talking, just I don't know. And maybe that's a generational thing too. As you say, kids don't look at that as strange or different, and
Right.
I do.
One thing I don't
I
think
mean,
is
even at conferences now, the number of journalists I see who have a Surface tablet, and then only when they're going to be writing for a while, then you see them
Yeah.
coming out with their keyboard attachment. But I know so many journalists, and I'm sure all of you have, who say, oh yeah, that's a conference, I just filed everything from my iPhone or from my iPad. So we are getting to that point where the keyboard is no longer be as necessary as we
Right.
used to think.
It'll be one tool of many that we use.
Exactly.
I do think that QWERTY is never going to go away, though. There's
No.
just too much muscle memory and education.
that
It's
queue is.
not going to happen. Yeah,
Okay.
I can close my eyes and type. I'm not. If
I
a new way
can't,
might
but-
be faster, but it's going to take me time to learn it. Why would I?
especially for certain use cases.
Yeah. It's just I don't think that's going to. I think devices will always have some form of a keyboard. We might use it less, and it might be out of the way most of the time, but it'll be there if we want it.
All right. Well, the future will let us know.
Yeah.
Okay. Any final thoughts about anything that we've talked about? Great.
I got to go order my Azure stack. I'll be back.
Go get your. I'm going to go order a keyboard.
Gotta make sure my security policies are all set.
All right. Well, listen, I want to say thanks to Mike, Brandon, Famita. Thank you for being here. Again, I'm Ken Mingus. Now you know what we know.